Hello, friends, and welcome back to the new episode of r/ProRevenge. Today we have one long story, but it's definitely something that we should hear to the end. Fire me? You're all losing your jobs. My 2019 was wild, but with everything finally on the up and up, I feel I can tell this story here. After college, late 2018, I fell on rough times and was forced to move back to my hometown. I tried to transfer my job to a branch in my area, but failed. Thus, I needed to get a new job. I settled for a 20-hour-a-week job at Bookies, with a second bartending job in the evenings. The Bookies is the target for my revenge, which was entirely accidental. Involved are the following: Janelle, my manager's manager; Shay, my manager; Jorge and Gordon, my coworkers; and Kara, a coworker at another store, which is relevant later. Names have been changed and/or redacted. I ended up working behind the counter as a customer service manager, basically a step up from a cashier. It's fancy when seen on a CV, but there's nothing really to it. I took bets, chatted with customers, helped people with machines, and for the vast majority of my shift, sat around waiting for something to do. I got on well with my coworkers, or so I thought, and had no major issues. It was 20 hours a week, about £1 more than minimum wage, with lots of overtime required of me and irregular shift patterns, though I had no issue with the job, beyond how difficult it was to juggle the schedules of both my jobs. In February of 2019, after working for the company for 6 months, I was invited to a probation hearing. It cannot be emphasized enough that it was a probation hearing in which I would have my performance reviewed and, as informed in training, was entitled to a pay raise at the end of it. I arrived that morning to a disciplinary hearing where, without even a shred of evidence, I was accused of 11 different cash discrepancies dating back to early November of 2018, shortly after I'd started, all of which amounted to about £271, all but one of which I'd never heard of before. These had apparently been reported and logged by my manager, Shay, and my coworkers, despite no one saying a word to me at all. Not a whisper in the 5 months that this had apparently been occurring. I was told that it was unacceptable. A call was made to HR and I was terminated on the spot and forced to hand over my keys and never set foot in the store again. To my protests, I was told the decision could not be appealed and I would eventually receive written confirmation of my employment's termination in the post. I didn't let myself slump around and feel sorry for myself, so on the way home, I opened up Indeed and applied for a bunch of jobs, and before I'd arrived home, had an interview set up for the next week at what is my current place of employment. Now I was furious, fuming at having gone to what I thought should have been a normal probation meeting and having effectively been called a thief and been banned for life from a place I'd never go to anyway, but somehow my parents were angrier and ordered me to let them know when they got into contact with me again. Almost 2 weeks later, I received an email from the company's HR which reiterated the accusations and stated again that I was terminated. My mom sat down with me in the kitchen and walked me through a letter response that was 2 parts professional and 3 parts scathing, ripping into them about their unprofessional conduct, their ludicrous claims, their lack of evidence, the holes in their story, because there were quite a few, and finally the cherry on the cake, the employment laws they'd broken. Now, I didn't want much, just a reference, a promise that not a whisper of these accusations would turn up when my new job asked them for a reference, because by then I'd already been offered the job. I then attached the letter to an email and fired back at their HR department. Then I added Janelle's work email, then her boss's email, and finally the holding company that owned the brand, because I wanted to make sure this was seen. A bit of background. The Bookies I worked for is a brand that's owned by an international company. The name behind the scenes is slapped on everything, and they pretty much dictate everything we did. I'm not sure if holding company is the correct term, but I'll stick with that for now. Anyway, I sent this email with a 48-hour window for response. I received a reply the next day from the same email that my demands were being met. I smirked victoriously and moved on with my life, happy to wash my hands of the entire ordeal. However, I'd set off a chain reaction that I wouldn't know about until 3 months later. 3 months on, I'd settled into my new job, a call center position with double the hours and well over double the pay. I'd gone through training and was settling into my new position when I see a new set of trainees settling in near my team. Among them was Gordon, one of my coworkers from the Bookies. I was stunned. Gordon had been at the Bookies for 6 years when I joined. He was well-liked, good at his job, and a favorite of the managers, There's no way he'd been fired. Though I didn't really want to talk to him, as I was of the impression that he, Jorge, and my manager had likely set me up, I did want to know what happened. Luckily, on seeing me in the break room one shift, he sought me out and told me everything. Apparently, my email had been read by the higher-ups in the holding company, and it caused a lot of scrutiny to fall onto the bookies in our town, of which there were 3 in our area that Janelle was responsible for, 2 in my town, and a 3rd in a neighboring one. Someone in HR passed a message down to the area manager, Janelle's boss, claiming they wanted things investigated and they wanted results yesterday, causing him to drop everything and descend on our little town with the panic and aggression of a man whose superiors were watching his every breath. He went to Janelle, wanting to know why he hadn't been made aware previously that I was apparently stealing money, why I had been given keys to the shop and shifts on my own with allegations of that nature attributed to me, and why I hadn't been put under investigation. Turns out Janelle had in fact put in my employee file that I was under investigation, but never actually gone through with any of the official procedures for monitoring and investigating me. Shock, horror. Thus, she had fired me for the accused crime without looking into it at all, falsely claiming otherwise. Thus, the area manager took the dates and amounts of cash discrepancies, confirmed that they had been reported on those days, without my knowledge, in Shay's own logbook of the shop's cash, and sent that information on to our security team to investigate. Another little detail is that the CCTV for every shop in the brand is outsourced to a private security company who monitors each shop remotely and has access to all the cameras and video. As was procedure, they looked into the dates mentioned to see if I'd been doing anything untoward. I know I wasn't, and nothing was ever said to me. But they did find something. Turns out money was going missing from the shop, but surprise, surprise, it wasn't me, but Jorge and Shay. They not only set me up, for reasons I'll never know, but were also falsifying numbers and cash checks on the system to hide it. One thing Shay was caught doing was deliberately shortchanging customers by taking portions of their winnings without them even knowing it. Bear in mind, a lot of our customers were elderly men and women. Gordon claims that he once opened the shop after I and Shay had closed the night before and noticed a cash difference, but had been told not to say anything to me as I was under investigation and could compromise it. He did apologize and let it go. Needless to say, Jorge and Shay were fired. But it doesn't end there. Our team was small, including me. There were a total of 4 people working at the store. As they hadn't been able to hire anyone to replace me, Jorge and Shay's termination meant Gordon was the only employee at the busiest shop in our area. Even if they'd been able to get other colleagues from the other 2 shops to help out, it wouldn't have been enough to keep the shop open and manage the amount of customers. So they closed the location down until they could get staff to run it. It was at that point that Gordon handed in his resignation and applied for his job at my work, meaning they had no one. On top of that, Gordon's girlfriend worked in the same shop as Janelle, and she relayed that she was rarely at their store in the other town for the next few weeks before the area manager reported she was fired as well. No reason given to her. I was later issued an apology for everything by the area manager and informed she, Janelle, was no longer with the company in an email sometime later. But somehow, it doesn't end there. With the store I worked at closed, this one being on the high street where most people preferred to go, the only other location in town was the much smaller location in the suburbs, the one where Kara worked, alone. She suddenly received an influx of customers into her tiny store space and had absolutely no support from other staff or upper management. Thus, for her own mental health, having already been overworked and underpaid, running an entire store by herself, she quit, meaning that location had to be closed down too. All of this at the worst time possible, March, when the Cheltenham Festival was occurring, which is a huge moneymaker for the gambling industry, even in a small town like ours. An opportunity the 3 other bookies on the high street reaped the benefits of instead of my old place, as the former customers went to them instead. As it currently stands, just a little over a year later, both shops remained closed, and I'm currently entering a job in cybersecurity, the training for which I paid for with my current job. Thanks for firing me, dumbasses. You did me a favor. Update. Gordon and I got in touch with our old area manager, and we were able to get a bit more information. The security team rifled through about 3 years' worth of footage after they found out about Jorge and Shay, and have estimated that, in that period alone, they both stole nearly £4,000 through various means. The parent company also got involved and searched through years' worth of cash checks and till checks and noted plenty of irregularities. The parent company pursued criminal charges and the two were arrested, but as far as our area manager knows, the case is still ongoing. He thinks it's because they're still looking into how much they actually stole. As they'd both been there a while, Jorge about 8 years and Shay 10 years, I doubt they'll have security footage of all that time. But I bet they're trying to get more accurate figures to really nail them. And in comes a new character, Tammy. Obviously not her real name. She's an employee who was hired and fired shortly before I was at the same stores. She lasted just past her probation before she was fired. Wait for it. For months' worth of cash differences and false till checks she wasn't made aware of prior. However, her situation is far worse than mine. Tammy's in the process of suing the company for wrongful termination, alongside financial and emotional damages, as she was put under a lot of stress whilst in the job by Shay, who apparently left her to fend for herself and would refuse to step in when customers got aggressive, then had a miscarriage shortly after her employment was terminated. Our area manager doesn't know anything more, as it's escalated and gone way above his head, and I doubt I'll be able to get any more information on it. But I doubt the company's doing too well on that front, and I wish her the best. Gordon and I are considering reaching out to some of the other fired employees, of which he can name a few who were terminated for similar reasons, to get their side of things, but it seems very clear that what Shay and Jorge were doing was going on for a long time, and I was only the latest scapegoat. Janelle, unfortunately, is perfectly fine as far as I'm aware. Her husband and her opened a taxi company several years ago, and she seems to have just got more involved with that. I haven't seen her, so I wouldn't know, but she was terminated for gross misconduct and not following procedure, which is kind of what I expected. And Kara, who our area manager actually really dislikes, but is lovely and did not deserve what she went through, is doing okay. I've messaged her, and she and her partner recently bought a house. She also got a job as an events manager at a local historical site. She's happier there as she actually has people to talk to at work and isn't alone anymore. Thank you guys for watching the video to the end, and I'll see you on the next one.